Welcome to The Explainer. So, if you're the kind of person who sets really big, ambitious goals, you probably know the exact pain of feeling just completely overwhelmed by them, right? I mean, we all want to write the book, build the massive business, or finally get our lives perfectly organized. But staring up at those massive ambitions can honestly leave us paralyzed. Today, we're not going to talk about just dreaming harder or finding some magical source of motivation. Instead, we're looking at the foundational architecture of your daily life. We're going to explore 9 micro-habits, small, seemingly boring actions that are scientifically backed to protect the 3 absolute most important resources you have. Okay, let's dive into this.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the mountain of ambition, and then we'll break the massive architecture of our lives down into 3 small, manageable chunks: attention habits, energy habits, and happiness habits.
First up, Part 1, the mountain of ambition, and how exactly to survive the dead zone.
You know, when you look at a massive goal from far away, it fundamentally alters how your brain processes the challenge. To really picture this, consider a piece of advice from a climber who has summited Mount Everest multiple times. When someone asked him what he remembered from the actual climb, his answer was brutally simple. He said, "Don't look up. If you look up, the mountain can break you." You see, above 8,000 meters, climbers enter what's literally known as the dead zone. The oxygen pressure is just way too low for the human body to survive up there. Every single step becomes incredibly expensive. Your lungs are fighting, your legs are burning, and because your brain is starved of oxygen, your judgment actually gets weaker. His advice was to just keep your eyes down. Take one step, pause, gather yourself, and then take the next. That is exactly how massive ambitions feel to our brains. If we stare at the whole mountain at once, we completely deplete our mental oxygen. We have to break things down.
Moving on to Section 1, attention habits, protecting your focus.
Now, we aren't talking about generic advice here, like, just put your phone in another room. We're talking about fundamentally shifting the architecture of how your brain processes tasks all day long. Habit number 1 is correct after the click. Think about how an airplane flies. When a pilot puts the plane on autopilot at cruising altitude, it almost never flies in a perfectly straight line. The wind pushes it, right? So the autopilot is constantly making these tiny micro-corrections. It essentially flies in a series of continuous recoveries. Our attention is exactly the same way. Most of us try to be perfect. We tell ourselves, "I will not pick up my phone." But then that automatic reflex fires. We're suddenly 3 scrolls deep into social media and we feel like a total failure. The new habit here is to interrupt the interruption. The exact moment you notice you've reflexively clicked a distracting app, attach a tiny good habit to it immediately. Don't beat yourself up, just get up and drink a glass of water or take a deep breath. You're course correcting on autopilot.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is a phenomenon discovered by psychologist Bluma Zagarnik. She noticed something absolutely fascinating in a cafe. The waiters could remember these incredibly complex, unpaid orders perfectly, but the very second the bill was paid, the memory of that order completely vanished from their minds. She tested this and found out that if a task is unfinished, your brain just keeps reaching for it. Every single unread email or meeting without a clear next step stays open in your brain's background. It drains your mental battery exactly like leaving 20 open apps will drain your phone's battery.
To combat that Zeigarnik effect, we need habit number 2, controlling your input. You do this by batching your tasks into fixed windows, say 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. And when you process those batches, you touch each item only once. You can use this 4D framework. Whenever you open an email or a task, you absolutely must choose one of 4 actions immediately. Do it right then, delegate it to someone else, date it by snoozing or scheduling it for later, or simply delete it. By forcing a firm decision, you close the mental loop and give your brain permission to finally put that task down.
Our third attention habit takes us straight into the boardroom. Jeff Bezos famously built a very strange meeting culture at Amazon. Executive meetings didn't start with some flashy presentation. They started in total silence while everyone sat there and read a written memo for 15 minutes. Why? Well, notice the difference. A slide deck can easily hide sloppy thinking, whereas a written narrative forces you to logically connect your thoughts. And science totally backs this up. A joint study from Princeton and UCLA found that students who wrote notes by hand performed significantly better on conceptual questions than those who just typed on laptops. Writing isn't just recording your thoughts, it is the active process of discovering what you actually think.
So, habit number 3 is to write to think. Before a hard conversation or a big decision, or honestly any time your mind feels a bit foggy, sit down and handwrite the answers to these 3 specific questions. What do I know? What am I assuming? And what is the next honest action? You don't need to write a whole novel, you just need to empty your mind onto the page so the mental fog can finally lift. Let's transition into Section 2, Energy Habits, Managing Your Biological Capacity. And this brilliantly illustrates how all the mental focus in the world won't help you if your body is exhausted. We are biological creatures, right? Mental clarity requires physical energy. Back in 1900, physicist Max Planck discovered that energy doesn't flow in a continuous stream, it actually moves in tiny, discrete packets called a quantum. Years later, the Manhattan Project took this concept to a terrifying extreme. They took the absolute smallest thing in nature, the atom, and split it, releasing enough energy to destroy entire cities. In nature, the smallest unit holds the absolute most power.
That brings us to habit number 4, quantize the action. The absolute hardest part of any task is simply starting it. Writing the first line of a book, or even just picking up the first dish to clean the kitchen, requires an immense amount of activation energy. So you must break your actions into the smallest possible packets. Don't commit to a full workout. Commit to doing half a push-up. Don't commit to reading a whole chapter. Commit to reading one single line. Reduce the force required to start and let the momentum just carry you forward.
Now for an energy habit you might not like, but it's absolutely vital. A 2013 study tested caffeine intake right before bed, 3 hours before, and 6 hours before sleep. They found that caffeine taken even a full 6 hours before bedtime significantly disrupts your deep rest. Caffeine actually has a half-life of 5 to 6 hours. To put that into perspective, that means if you have a coffee at 4 p.m., half of that caffeine is still actively circulating in your brain at 9 p.m., and a quarter of it is still just hanging out in there after midnight.
Therefore, habit number 5 is the caffeine constraint. You might think you're sleeping totally fine after a late afternoon coffee, but you are literally being robbed of your deep rest. This causes you to wake up groggy, which leads you to reach for more coffee, and the vicious cycle just continues. The absolute most productive thing you can do for your career and your focus is to fiercely protect your sleep. Enforce a strict 6-hour cutoff before your head hits the pillow.
Our final energy habit deals with how we structure our workdays. Nathaniel Kleitman, who is essentially the father of modern sleep research, discovered that our brains don't just cycle at night, they move in waves during the day too. He called them ultradian rhythms. Notice the massive difference between these two models. Our brains are biologically built for an 80 to 120-minute wave of high alertness, followed by a trough or a dip in energy. Yet we try to force our brains into this non-stop 8-hour factory model you see on the right, just pushing through the natural dips with caffeine and guilt.
So, when you crash at 3:30 in the afternoon, that is a biological signal. It's not a failure of your discipline. Habit number 6 is to ride the waves. Schedule true recovery blocks. And here is the major catch. Most people take a break and immediately look at their phones, right? That just fills their brains with more input. A real recovery block means 0 new inputs. Go walk for 10 minutes, do some deep breathing, step away from all screens, and let your brain actually recover in the trough so you're ready to ride that next peak.
Let's move to and see how this builds. Section 3, Happiness Habits, the Cosmic Perspective. When we zoom out from our daily grind and our physical energy and just look up at the night sky, we find some much-needed perspective on our lives. Habit number 7 is incredibly simple. Look up. When life feels overwhelmingly heavy, step outside at night and just look at the stars. Our story is tied to an ancient universe that is 13.8 billion years in the making. And the most fascinating part? The night sky isn't a live broadcast. Light takes time to travel. The starlight hitting your eyes tonight might have been sent thousands of years ago. Some of those stars are already dead. You are literally looking at ghosts from the past. It instantly reminds you of the incredible miracle and magic of our existence.
Habit number 8 is the natural companion to looking up. Look in the mirror. Really look at yourself. You are made of the exact same atoms, the exact same stardust that forged those vast galaxies above you. And you are a dynamic, living miracle. In just the roughly 8 seconds it takes me to read this sentence, your body has seamlessly replaced roughly 30 million cells. Think about that. You are constantly changing every single second, yet you somehow feel perfectly like yourself.
When you practice looking up at the stars and then looking in the mirror at your own biology, it naturally generates a sense of awe and gratitude. And those two emotions lead us perfectly to our 9th and final habit, self-forgiveness. Your systems will eventually break. You're going to miss a habit. You will have days where absolutely everything goes wrong. But when that happens, do not get trapped in a spiral of shame. On your worst days, self-prosecution and guilt are far more exhausting than simply missing a habit. Remind yourself that your life is large and forgive yourself.
So, the crucial point is this: perfection is completely impossible. The true goal here isn't never failing. It's building a reliable set of tools that you can lean on when things go wrong.
Will you let your best habits help you find your way home, even on your worst days, or will you let the mountain break you? The choice of your next micro habit starts right now.